Hello and welcome to my video. And just like the other videos I've done where you guys ask me questions, this one is going to have spoilers. So just be warned that if you have not read the trilogy, the Canon Chronicles, or the first two books in the Omte Origins, there will be spoilers in this video. Because I want to make sure that I have time, I'm going to answer the questions that I had gotten about the Omte Origins first, and then after that I'll do like a real quick recap of the first two books and kind of mention things that I think you might want to keep in mind before you dive into the Ever After. So one of the questions I got was, do I think that Finn and Mia will have more kids? I don't know for sure. I mean, they have 6 kids right now, and that's kind of a lot. And they also have, Ula too is kind of like another one of their kids. So I think maybe, but I think they might also be done. I don't know. I mean, I think they're kind of leaving it up to chance, I guess, at this time. But I don't know. Another question I had was, will we see more of Bryn in the Ever After, and is she Ula's sister? Now I can't answer that, the second question, because you'll have to read the book and find out. But I can say that Bryn will definitely, she's in the Ever After, because it's the final book in the series, in the final book of all the series. I wanted to make sure that Bryn and Wendy were represented in this book. So you will definitely get to see Bryn and Wendy and some of your other favorites from the first two series in the Ever After. You find out what they're up to. So another question that a reader had was, did I always plan on Ula having a spin-off of her own? And basically, yes, I did. Like, since I introduced her, because Ula actually is first introduced in the Crystal Kingdom. She's got a very small role in the third book of the Canon Chronicles. And, like, basically since I conceived of her, I was really just interested in her and finding out more about her. And I don't know, she just really spoke to me. And so I had ideas for her, like, right off the bat. And so, yeah, she was basically, like, I knew that she was going to be the star of the spinoff if I did one. And I kind of thought I would after the Canon Chronicles, but yeah, so here we are. Another question that a reader had was, will there be any, like, flashbacks, or will I be looking at anything that happened, like, before the trilogy, or any flashbacks with, like, Constantine or anything from the Canon Chronicles? And there aren't, like, flashbacks to things that happened in the previous books, or really flashbacks of Wendy or Bryn or any of the characters before the Omte Origins. But there are still, like, references and callbacks to the characters and some of the things that happened in the previous books. There really are, like, a lot of callbacks, but I wouldn't say that there are flashbacks. I mean, there are some mentions and some things that are done that I think I'll talk about more once the book is released, because I don't want to have spoilers about the Ever After. But yeah, I think if you enjoyed the Canon Chronicles and the trilogy, you should definitely read the Omte Origins. The final question is more of, because the trilogy and the Canon Chronicles are both released as a solitary bind-up. So you can get the Canon Chronicles, all 3 books in one book called The Hidden Kingdom, and then all 3 trill books together is called The Complete Trill. And so you can get those 2 in, like, one big book bind-up. But so someone asked if that will help in the Omte Origins. And I actually can't really say for sure. I think maybe. But, like, when they do those bind-up things, it really depends on what the sales are of the 3 books, and so I don't really know what the sales are, if they're going to justify doing a bind-up. And so it's one of those things that I can't really bank on. So maybe if you're holding out to read the series, though, until it's in one book, I would suggest not doing that and just buying it, because it's one of those things that isn't always a guarantee. So yeah, I'm going to do kind of like a brief recap of The Lost City and The Morning Flower. As you may recall, Ula Tulin is trying to find out who her parents are, and she has now that journey has taken her, like, through a lot of the troll community, and she has more exploring to do within the kingdoms. So far, she has been to Fjerning, the troll capital, and she's been to Morella, which is a Vitra city where the Mimran is located. And she's also been to Fulatrask, which is the Omte capital. And she goes to some more places in the Ever After. You may remember Doldestam, the capital of the Canon Chronicles. That's going to come into play in the Ever After. We're also going to be looking forward more at... Bryn has a larger role, I think, definitely in the Omte Origins. She is the main character from the Canon Chronicles, and she is a friend of Ula's and possible relative of Ula's, and so now their paths collide again. And yeah, one thing when I was writing this book, I really wanted to look back at the other two trilogies and look at, what my focuses were, what my inspirations were. And one of my main inspirations for the original trilogy was Peter Pan stories and children's stories, and I really liked how like nursery rhymes and those kinds of things, and I wanted to have them play into the larger fantasy. And in fact, at the end of the trill, Wendy figures out kind of how to defeat Orin, who they think is immortal and unstoppable, by looking at children's stories. And because she hears this old fable about the 5 tribes and how they got split up, and that story became one of the big backbones for how I developed the Omte Origins. And also then, like I said, the Peter Pan mythology really played a big role into it. And so there's a lot of characters in this book that I took inspiration from the Peter Pan stories. When the book comes out, I think I'll explain more some of the comparisons I made to Peter Pan, but you're definitely be looking for like different like Easter eggs and stuff and connections that way, for sure. And also with the story, I wanted to I've kind of told the point of view from each of the different class sections in the book, and that was kind of my goal with it. With the trilogy, it follows royalty, with Wendy being a princess and then eventually a queen. And with the Cana Chronicles, it follows more of a working class tracker guard who still like has kind of an elite part in society, but not really. And then in this one we have Ula, who is a troll of mixed blood from the most looked down upon tribes, and she's an orphan, and she is not wealthy and not as attractive as the other two heroines. And so I think that was kind of showing how the different class will affect all of them. I wanted to have these contrasting stories of what life is like in troll society depending on who you are. And Ula's is the only one. Ula talks a lot more about struggling with money, about finding a place to stay, how they're going to get around. That did provide more difficulty in writing the story, because trying to figure out how Ula is going to be able to do the things that she needs to do and go the places that she needs to go when she doesn't have the kind of resources that Wendy and Bryn had access to. So that was kind of a bit of a challenge, but I think it makes sense. And as I've said before, I did write the Omte Origins. I try to write these separate trilogies so that if you haven't read the first 2 trilogies, you can understand what's going on with the Omte Origins. With that said, because it's the final trilogy, I really did try to build on the previous 2 trilogies and have callbacks and have characters come back and have references to things that I think if you want to get the full depth and scope of the books, that it's good to read all of the previous 8 books before you get to the Ever After to really get the full emotional impact. The complete trilogy and the complete Canon Chronicles are available now, as are the first 2 books in the Omte Origins, The Lost City and The Morning Flower, and the final book, The Ever After, will be out January 5th, 2021. So I'm going to be doing some more videos, talking about some different stuff. I've got a video where I'm going to talk about music, about my Dreamcast, about inspiration, and yeah. So just stay tuned, and thank you for watching.